Well, we now know the Philadelphia Eagles' Week 1 opponent, and I think it was a lazy move by the NFL. I'll tell you why coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast.
You are Locked On Eagles, your daily Philadelphia Eagles podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
We thank you so much for making Locked On Eagles your first listen each and every day. Welcome in, Eagles fans, to this Monday edition of the show. I'm your host, Louis DiBiase. Today's episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use our code LOCKEDONNFL in all capital letters at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Philadelphia Eagles, Dallas Cowboys, Week 1, Thursday Night Football is going to be the season opener for the National Football League in 2025. And I overall love always beating the Dallas Cowboys. I'm glad to do it in front of the world in that first game. But I think the NFL's perception of the Dallas Cowboys' national popularity is just completely misguided, outdated, and incorrect. Again, I think this will be a fun game because the Super Bowl winner in the season opener is 15-5 in the last 20 opening games. The Eagles are a better football team than Dallas. They're at home. They have the Super Bowl championship vibes at the Link. The first game since they won a title. It's going to be immaculate. Raising the Lombardi trophy in front of the fans, raising the banner in front of the Cowboys is going to be incredible. Like making the Dallas Cowboys watch the Eagles raise a banner again in Philadelphia, to raise a second banner when all that fan base did and Washington did and New York did for years and years and years throughout the 21st century was say, we've got rings, you don't. Yeah, you might be the best team, the most consistent team in this division in the 21st century, but you haven't won the big one. Now, the Eagles have two, and to make Dallas watch that, it is pretty cool. I'll say from an Eagles fandom perspective, I like that part of this. But who keeps asking to watch the Dallas Cowboys in the season opener of the entire league? Who is asking to watch the Dallas Cowboys 5+ times a year on Sunday Night Football, on Monday Night Football? Who is asking to watch the Dallas Cowboys on Thursday Night Football, on Thanksgiving at 4:25 every single year? This is not 1995. They are not America's team anymore. This brand that the Cowboys think they have and the NFL thinks they have. Now, does Dallas have a huge fan base? Of course they do. Do they have a fan base around the world just based on their name? Like, their net worth is still very high. It's among the top of all sports franchises, sure. That doesn't mean marketable, in my opinion. That doesn't always mean interesting. That doesn't always mean that is the team that you feature no matter what. Like, yes, those teams, when they're good, are even more popular nationally, globally, than other teams are. Like the Dallas Cowboys, when they're good, like the Los Angeles Lakers, the Boston Celtics, the New York Yankees, the Boston Red Sox. Like, yes, when those teams are great, they are more marketable globally than pretty much any other franchise, right? But when they're not good, or when they're average or good, not great, adequate, mediocre, it's not the same vibe. Like, look back, even when the Boston Celtics in the NBA had Isaiah Thomas and they were a 1 seed, but they weren't winning championships. They didn't really have a star, a LeBron James caliber star. You know, the Boston Celtics weren't a team that everybody was dying to watch. When the Los Angeles Lakers were in that era between Kobe Bryant and LeBron James, like, who was asking to watch the Los Angeles Lakers? In the NFL, it's the same thing. I think a lot of it has to do with players now, especially for the younger sports fan. A lot of it now is the Buffalo Bills are marketable because of Josh Allen. The Kansas City Chiefs, they were not a prominent franchise when I was growing up, when they had Alex Smith and, you know, who else before him? Matt Castle at one point. Now they have Patrick Mahomes. They're marketable. The Detroit Lions right now are a marketable franchise. So are the Baltimore Ravens because they have Lamar Jackson. So for me, it's like, this NFL old school thinking with the Dallas Cowboys still, no matter what, we should feature them. Like, we want Dallas to be the face of our league. I don't understand that. They haven't done anything to earn that in my entire lifetime, in at least 30 years at this point. So, I don't know. Like, yeah, I guess it's a classic rivalry in the NFC East between the Eagles and the Cowboys. So it's one of the biggest rivalries in the history of sports. I guess in that way, it makes sense, but it feels very lazy, this decision. Like, I really thought they were going to go Eagles-Lions, the NFC Championship game last year that we all thought we were going to get. Or a couple rematches that they could have decided between of the playoff run of 2024, an all-time classic playoff game between the Eagles and the Rams. I think those are the two best teams in the NFC. Those should have been the two teams that are playing on week one. To me, not the Cowboys. Like, what did they do to earn this right outside of this brand, this name they carry, this weight that they carry that it's just so unjustified to me? We're the Dallas Cowboys. Why? Because everyone says we are, and we say we are. Why do we care? Because we say you care. It's like I think the NFL is telling us we want the Dallas Cowboys. We're not telling the NFL that we want the Dallas Cowboys. Maybe I'm thinking of this through an Eagles lens, but I think most people will agree. A lot of fans that I talk to that aren't Eagles fans agree with this. They aren't asking for the Dallas Cowboys. So I don't know. I would have chose, if I was the NFL, I would have chose Eagles Rams. If not, Eagles Lions. If not that, maybe the rematch. If you want to do the NFC East rivalry thing, how about go with the better football team that the Eagles just played in the NFC Championship? How about the Washington Commanders with Jaden Daniel? And oh, by the way, they brought in a guy that the Eagles fan base hates. He's a rival because they were beefing before with another team that was competing, unlike Dallas, for Super Bowls. Deebo Samuel and the San Francisco 49ers. Deebo Samuel's over in Washington now. They added a lot of talent this free agent period, and Laramie Tunsil trading for him. They added, Conley in the draft. They added some good protection for Daniels. I don't know, to me, that would have made more sense. The Rams would have made more sense. The Lions would have made more sense. It just felt very lazy and boring to be like, oh, Eagles, Cowboys, big rivalry, NFC East. We always put Dallas on the national spotlight. Like, here's what we're going to do. I don't know. I mean, again, there will be parts of this that are really cool. I think, again, making Jerry Jones sit in that building, and I know he's probably not going to watch it, but having the ceremony before the game where Jeffrey Lurie, I'm sure, will get on stage again like he did in 2018 against Atlanta, thank the crowd, show them the trophy that they didn't get to hoist with him, of course, because the Super Bowl is in New Orleans, show off that trophy, raise another big banner, the 2024 champions. That's going to be awesome. The Dallas Cowboys do have a good team. Like, there's going to be a lot of fun matchups in that game. It'll only actually be, barring nothing bad happens, it'll only be the fourth time ever that Jalen Hurts and Dak Prescott go head-to-head. So Dak Prescott will be back. 3 of the 9 games they've played against each other since 2020, insanely enough, those are the only games that have involved Hurts and Dak. 3 of 9 possible matchups since 2020. So I get that part. You got, Lane Johnson against Micah Parsons. They traded for George Pickens, who is, I think, much improving that passing game. So you got Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean against CeeDee Lamb and, George Pickens. But I don't know. Yeah, for me, I just think this was the lazy, low-hanging fruit matchup. I think I would have much rather went Eagles-Rams, then I would say Eagles-Lions, Eagles-Commanders. Those teams are better than Dallas. I think they're more entertaining right now than Dallas. They're more marketable. The Dallas Cowboys, the only thing about their brand now is just their team name. I don't know. So I think the NFL, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe they're look at the numbers. We're doing this for a reason. But my take of the show is the NFL's perception of the Cowboys' popularity is incorrect. And just because they make a lot of money, just because they are a big name in the NFL, doesn't mean they're entertaining, doesn't mean we all still care about them, especially more than other football teams. Again, in sports now, so much of it, even in the NFL, which is a very team-first fan base and just league overall, even in the NFL, so much of it now is about the player. Just look at the New England Patriots. The longest tenured dynasty of this century, maybe the best dynasty in the history of football. It was a Tom Brady-led dynasty. The minute Tom Brady left, guess what? Nobody cared about the New England Patriots anymore. Even when Bill Belichick and Mac Jones led them to a playoff berth in 2021, guess what? Nobody cared. Nobody cared. The Green Bay Packers will always see as a prominent NFL franchise. The New York Giants, the same thing. Look what happened when the New York Giants had Daniel Jones. Nobody cared. I feel the same way about the Dallas Cowboys. They're a good team. I'm not saying they're terrible, but I don't know. I think it's a lazy pick for the season opener. But Eagles beat the Cowboys to start the year in front of the world as defending Super Bowl champions. I don't think it was the worst pick ever. I mean, that part is definitely nice. All right, guys, coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast, the Eagles are getting ready to get back. They're going to try to get back to a second straight Super Bowl. This will be the third attempt in under a decade that they tried to do that. What lessons can they learn from the 2018 team and the 2023 team that was not able to hit that mark? We'll get into it coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast. All right, guys, today's show is sponsored by Monarch Money. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where the hell did all my money go? Well, between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app, it's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place. So you stop just managing your money and you start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on food delivery. It was a daily occurrence. My pockets were getting just robbed. Now I budget smarter and I save more thanks to Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Once again, that's code LOCKEDON, all capital letters, LOCKEDONNFL at monarchmoney.com. Code LOCKEDONNFL for half off your first year. All right, so 2025 marks the third time in under a decade the Eagles will try to get to back-to-back Super Bowls. They've never done it in their franchise's history. They won it in 2017, came close in 2018, as toxic of a season that was, a roller coaster ride. They were a few plays away from beating the Saints in the division around that year. Then who knows? Could they have beat the Rams again in the NFC title, beat the Patriots in the Super Bowl? Maybe. They were close, closer than people give them credit for in 2018, but they weren't able to get it done. Of course, they lose to the Chiefs in the 2022 Super Bowl, Super Bowl 57. 2023, they suffer the biggest collapse I've seen in the history of the NFL for a Super Bowl contender that's 9 games over 500, that had beaten so many good teams that year, to lose 5 of their next 6, get blown out in the wild card round of the playoffs on the road in Tampa Bay. A disaster season. I mean, one of the most chaotic, toxic seasons, like shocking seasons I've ever watched in my life as an Eagles fan. So those teams were not able to get back in back-to-back years. It's a very difficult thing. Even if you don't repeat as champions, getting to 2 Super Bowls in a row, whether you win one and lose one, you lose both, you win both, it's really, really difficult. Outside of, I mean, Kansas City and New England, like, has there been another team you can think of that's done that? No, I mean, because another team hasn't repeated, and there hasn't been a team that's, I mean, the 49ers are the next team that's come close, that's really been able to get back pretty consistently to the Super Bowl or the NFC Championship. They were into in a quick span. Same with the Rams, but again, neither team was really close getting back to back. Whereas the Eagles this year, I think, will have a really good chance to do that. How do they do that? What lessons could they learn from 2018 and 2023? I think you could learn different lessons from both teams, very different situations for both rosters. Both seasons were completely different. One team peaked in the beginning, one team peaked in the end. Either way, it was too little too late by the time the playoffs came around. But I do think there are some common themes with both teams kind of underwhelming in those seasons. I think the first lesson, be in love with the climb. The day by day. Nick Sirianni preaches it all the time, and you can roll your eyes when you hear that kind of, coach speak, if you will, right? But when he says that, like, that is really, I don't know, for me, like, that's real. Like, taking things day by day, being enamored and obsessed with the process, with practice, with each regular season game, the game-by-game approach, the day-by-day approach, practice by practice, play by play. Like, hey, next play, next whistle. You have to be obsessed and in love with that, because if not, it gets really hard for you to not look ahead or to look back. I think the 2018 team was looking back too much. I think their cup was full. I don't think that team expected to win in 2017. And when they did, not only did they shock the world, they shocked the Patriots, they shocked the world, I think they kind of shocked themselves. And they enjoyed that success, as they should have, but they really went on a victory tour. I mean, Nick Foles wrote a book, so did Doug Peterson, and you could just tell, like, even the Eagles themselves, the organization, the way they were decorating the locker room with Super Bowl 52 stuff and putting it all over the stadium, not just the banner, but it's still to this day is hanging up by the standing room only section where there's a little Super Bowl 52 square flag at like the highest point of the stadium, which will probably get taken down now for the new one. But they didn't really know how to handle success. They didn't really know how to act when they won a Super Bowl. And I think that's a good thing. They were overly excited in a way, but it just felt like they weren't ready for the grind again, to climb the mountain. By the time the season had started in 2018, it almost it came too fast for them. They're like, wait, hold on. Like, we're not ready for this. We're still enjoying Super Bowl 52. Like, we don't want to do all this yet, and then kind of erase what just happened. I think that really was what happened, is the 2018 Eagles that started off 4-6, they were looking behind. They were really enjoying that Super Bowl win. I don't think they handled that success well. Then being the hunted instead of the hunter, like having to adjust, thinking they could just run it back and do everything they did in 2017 and 2018 and it would work again. I think they got complacent and a little lazy that season, right? I think they got kind of a big head and they really, really enjoyed that win. So I think they looked back too much. They didn't really want to go through that climb again. They didn't want to climb the mountain, the process, the day-by-day, game-by-game approach. They did at the end. They figured it out. They did win, those 3 straight games to get into the playoffs. They upset Chicago on the road. They nearly beat the 1-seed Saints in the divisional round. So they did eventually wake up to this, and they were able to bounce back from adversity, which was so important. So I want to give that 2018 Eagles team some credit, but I do think a lesson you could learn from that team is make it easier on yourself by being ready to turn the page faster. That team was not ready to turn the page until it was almost too late. It was like halfway through the year. More than that, it was that 48-7 blowout loss to the Saints, which was the biggest loss a defending Super Bowl champion has ever suffered in the history of this league, right? That was really when they woke up. They're like, oh my God, wait, like, we're not the champs anymore. Look at this. Like, we are not even close to that team. We can't enjoy that anymore. That's not who we are. I think they saw Carson Wentz regressing too, and it really woke them up like, this year is not last year. Carson Wentz isn't the same. We are not the same. We got to wake up. They did. They made the most of a really tough season and almost made it back to the NFC Championship. So the fact that they were able to do what they did, considering the injuries as well they suffered that year, like, commendable. But I think that's the lesson you can learn from 2018 is when the season starts, you got to be ready to turn the page. The fans don't. I'm going to enjoy Super Bowl 59 for years at this point with how much I enjoyed that season. But the players, they got to be ready for that grind because it is an absolute grind and it's already started. When it comes to 2023, it felt like it was the opposite. They were just ready to move forward. Like, let's forget last year. We lost the Super Bowl. We don't want to think about it. Let's just get back. Like, man, we are being tortured by how close we were, but we didn't get it done. Let's just get back to that moment so we can avenge what happened. Like, it felt like they were just being tortured by what happened. They were trying to fast forward too quickly to get to the playoffs, to get to the Super Bowl. And I think you could tell, even in that 10-1 start, they were miserable. They were not having fun on that football team. There was a source that told Jeff McClain 2 years ago that somebody inside the building, and you guys know how I feel about anonymous sources. I absolutely hate them, but somebody in the NovaCare complex, and I believe it, said, because you could see it on the field, that was the most miserable 10-1 football team in the history of the NFL. They were sloppy. They were undisciplined. And kind of like 2018, they just really leaned on what worked in 2022. They leaned on their strengths. They didn't really get better. They didn't really evolve. This team, though, I think they're going to learn those lessons, and I think they kind of already did last year. This team is the right makeup now to not make those same mistakes. Like, I think Jalen Hurts, I mean, you could tell this team wasn't going to suffer the same results as 2018 or 2023 when the Super Bowl parade hadn't even happened yet, and Jalen Hurts was like, yeah, I gave myself like 3 or 4 days for a break. I'm ready already. He's already on the field throwing for the next year. A.J. Brown, kind of the same thing. He's like, yeah, winning the Super Bowl was fun. It was great. Wasn't as good as I thought. I'm obsessed with the process. I'm obsessed with dominating my craft. So he was back in the lab, back on the field running routes, doing on-field workouts. Same with Devontae Smith. I think the Georgia guys on defense, they know what it takes to win back-to-back championships. They repeated as champs at the University of Georgia in 2020, 2021, right? Or was it 2021, 2022? Either way, like, they know on defense what that's going to take. This team, although they are young, they have the right makeup to, I think, learn those lessons that the 2018 Eagles did not, or at least it was too little too late, and the same with 2023. That's a very important, I think, lesson if you're going to try to repeat in 2025, or at least have a close chance, because it's very difficult. Only a few teams have ever done it. If they're going to have a shot, they got to be in love with the process. They got to be in love with the climb. Getting back up to that mountaintop, you got to be obsessed with that. You can't just hop in a helicopter and have it take you all the way up there like 2023 they thought. And you can't just be watching a movie about your last climb or reading a book about it or writing a book about it like the 2018 Eagles thought they could. The other, I think, obvious lesson to learn is you got to handle pressure better and you got to handle adversity better. Now, again, 2024, they kind of proved already that they were able to figure that out. You just look at that loss to Tampa Bay. You're 2-2 heading into the bye week. Everything looks bad. The fan base, the media are questioning your head coach. They are questioning your quarterback. At the time, I thought it was justified. That team could have totally collapsed like they did in 2023, and they didn't. So I think this lesson has kind of already been learned to a degree. But every year, a team is different. Players are different. The season is different. The situation is different. And when you're the champ, or even the runner-up, when you made a Super Bowl the previous year, it doesn't matter what you overcame the year before. There's a different, unique kind of pressure that comes with that reputation, that comes with that kind of target on your back, right? And I think 2018, they did not handle pressure or adversity well until, like I said earlier, it was almost too late. 2023, they were so fragile to that kind of stuff that after a Super Bowl loss, the minute they got punched in the face by a good team. And this is the craziest part about that team was they had beaten the Cowboys, the Dolphins, the Chiefs, the Bills. They were running through that gauntlet of a schedule in the middle of the year and beating all these great teams. But then the 49ers punched them in the face, and the Eagles said to themselves basically, oh, we're not as good as we thought we were. And their confidence was completely shot. And then they got blown out in Jerry World by Dallas, and the season was over. The minute the 49ers killed that team, it was over. So you have to have more confidence in that. You have to be able to handle adversity and pressure. You got to also, here's another thing, you got to be okay with seasons not going the same way. It's not going to look the same as last year. It's not going to always be as easy as winning 10 straight games, which was a franchise record last year. It's not going to always look as, and I know the 3 Super Bowl years they've done it, they did go on some crazy tears in 2017, 2022, 2024. They've gone on 9+ game win streaks, right? Win streaks of at least 9 games or more. But every year it's not going to look like that. You might have seasons like 2018 where, hopefully you're not the 6th seed on the road where you had to win 3 straight games just to punch your ticket into the playoffs. But not every year is going to be as easy as last year. This year's schedule is really tough. You're going to have teams in your division that get better, that are going to be competing with you for the NFC East crown. You're not going to be as comfortable as you were last year. There's going to be teams in the NFC overall that get better. It's going to be hard to secure the only bye week in the NFC or a top 2 seed to get home field advantage throughout the playoffs like they were lucky enough to get last year. That might not be the case this year. Detroit might not get upset by a team like the Commanders. You might have to go on the road at some point if you're not the 1 seed. In the playoffs, in the divisional round, in the NFC Championship game. You got to be okay with seasons not going the same way. You got to be okay with your team looking different, doing things well or bad, being your strengths and weaknesses being different. This team has a lot of the same core intact, so it's going to be a pretty similar team, but every season is different, and NFL teams catch up quick. Things change. You have to change as well. You have to evolve. I think that's important because, like I said earlier, 2018 and 2023, those teams thought they could kind of just do what they did the year before and it would work again. And that's not the way the NFL works. So those are some lessons I think this year's team in 2025, what they can take from 2018 and 2023 if they want to get back to a second straight Super Bowl. All right, guys, coming up next right here on the Locked On Eagles podcast, we will wrap up this Monday edition of the show, getting into the confidence level that I have in the 2025 roster on paper compared to some of these past teams. We'll get into it. Don't go anywhere. We will be right back. All right, guys, wrapping up this Monday edition of Locked On Eagles. We know the Eagles are taking on the Cowboys week 1 in the season opener. The schedule, all of it officially is released on Wednesday night, but we're getting bits and pieces, and the Eagles were the star of the show today. We also know they're going to play the Commanders on Saturday Night Football, week 16. We also know they got the Black Friday game against the Chicago Bears. Yes, the Chicago Bears. If that's at home, which I believe it is, right? Yeah. All black on Black Friday. I think black helmet, black jersey, black pants, you got to do it. So we know the Eagles are taking out, and at least as of right now, the schedule is Cowboys week 1 in the opener. We've got the Bears Black Friday on Amazon, and then we've got Saturday Night Football against the Commanders week 16. So we know a Thursday night game, a Friday night game, and a Saturday night game. No Sundays yet. I'm hoping a lot of those are at 1 o'clock because we already have 3 primetime games, and I'm getting old, and doing this show at 1 a.m. sometimes is tough. So let's hope, considering they're going to get a lot of primetime games as reigning Super Bowl champions, hopefully they get some 1 o'clockers on Sunday. But I'm not feeling too confident in that. I'm sure there's going to be a lot of 4:25 national games on Fox. I'm sure there's going to be a few Sunday nighters, Monday nighters, probably another Thursday night game. No, probably not, with a Thursday night season opener, a Black Friday game, and a Saturday game. They might not get another Thursday nighter unless they have to. I don't remember the rules, but yeah, probably not a lot of Sunday at 1 o'clock games for us. So that sucks. But overall, it's going to be champs and going to be featured across the league. This 2025 team, though, I'm very confident in them. I think they're going to learn the lessons of past teams in this franchise's history, coming off Super Bowl appearances, coming off Super Bowl wins. And when it comes to the overall talent on this roster, that's the thing too. Like, this team, on paper, somebody asked me the other day, like, how good is this team compared to last year, compared to 2022, compared to 2017? On paper, I think it's just as good as last year heading into the season. Like, we aren't sure what these replacement players will be, but the guys they're replacing, like Milton Williams, Josh Sweat, Darius Slay, Chauncey Gardner-Johnson coming back, they weren't seen as like star, sure thing, alpha dogs last year either. They eventually ended up being that for this football team down the stretch throughout the playoff run, winning a Super Bowl. But we didn't know that about Josh Sweat heading into the year. He took a pay cut and was on a restructured 1-year contract. Darius Slay was coming off a down year in 2023. We didn't know what his future was going to be in Philadelphia or how he'd hold up this year. Milton Williams, we're like, okay, no more Fletcher Cox. Can you fill the void next to Jalen Carter? So, on paper, I think this team, to me, is as good as it was last year heading into the season. 2018, I think it's actually even better. And I think one thing you're not going to have to worry about as much this year as 2018 is the huge regression in a lot of these players. Like, I think 2017, you just saw a lot of lightning in a bottle. So many guys just had a career season at the same time. And then the following year, those players kind of turned back into a pumpkin. We realized, Nigel Bradham's not as good as we thought. Or he wasn't the star, at least, we saw in 2017. Carson Wentz wasn't the MVP we saw in 2017. Even Nelson Aguilar wasn't the playoff hero. Although those guys were also solid in 2018, they weren't. Corey Clement wasn't the Super Bowl hero he was in 2017 in 2018. A lot of those guys had career seasons at the perfect time. It was almost like this. The 2017 Eagles was just like mythical urban legend, right? This year's team, I don't think you have to worry about that. This team is just more naturally talented. These guys are more proven, and they're also younger. That was the other thing about that 2018 Eagles roster. They got old really quickly. And so a lot of those guys also just plummeted from a regression standpoint too. Not everybody, but I think there were a lot of those guys that just weren't the same. Jay Ajayi suffered more injuries in the backfield, just not the same. So even Nick Foles, to a degree, he helped you spark that run at the end of the year and almost get you back to the NFC Championship. But the 2018 Nick Foles wasn't playing like the 2017 playoff Nick Foles. I mean, he wasn't really that great in the Bears playoff game. He was very inconsistent in the Saints playoff game. He was incredible against the Texans and the Rams in the at the time, Washington, week 17. Those 3 regular season games to finish off the year, he was unbelievable. But even Nick Foles kind of turned back into a pumpkin that year in the playoffs. So I think this team, because a lot of it's they're just younger naturally. So a lot of these times are ascending players. They're not, regressing players like those teams that were getting old. I think that naturally is a reason to feel more confident, but they're just more talented. They've got to hit on their replacement players, though. That's the other thing about 2018 and 2013. Replacing Torrey Smith with Mike Wallace did not work. Replacing Jordan Hicks, he got hurt at linebacker, but replacing Michael Kendricks then with like LJ Fort did not work. Corey Nelson, it did not work. Replacing LeGarrette Blount, just committing to Jay Ajayi, that was not the move. Those kind of decisions, how he didn't hit as much. Golden Tate wasn't a great trade that year. A lot of his moves that year didn't work as well as they did in 2017. Same with 2023. Like Kevin Byard wasn't the same player as Chauncey Gardner-Johnson. So Terrell Edmonds wasn't the same as Chauncey Gardner-Johnson either. The linebackers, Zach Cunningham and Miles Jack, they weren't your new Kazir White and TJ Edwards. So I think that's the other thing is Howie does have to kind of hit on these lower tier signings like an Azeez Ojulari type. But this Eagles roster is just so much better set up for the short-term and long-term future than those teams. So how do they look on paper compared to past Eagles contenders? I think just as good, if not better. They are, to me, still the most complete. Even if they're not better than last year's team, which was one of the best in NFL history, I think this is still the most complete team in the NFL. All right, guys, that's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Eagles. Thanks so much for tuning in and making us your first listen each and every day. One more show for you until the schedule is released Wednesday. We'll have a full breakdown podcast of that as well. So make sure you subscribe on all podcast platforms and on YouTube as well. Thanks as always for downloading, watching, and listening. And let's go Birds. Fly, Eagles, fly.